Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
Located at 109 Wall Boulevard in Gretna, Uniforms by Logo Express provides school uniforms, medical wear, hospitality wear, safety and industrial wear, and so much more. We offer a number of locations on both sides of the river. 2 in Chantilly, 1 in Woodmere, and our main store located in Gretna. Uniforms by Logo Express. Your brand starts here.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Derek Freeman in the MFG, everybody. Featuring, well, Derek Freeman. He is the leader of the band on drums. And, of course, Devin Taylor on tuba. And big game James Martin on saxophone. What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
Everything's great, man. Springtime, it's about to be festival season. We're about to get things rolling, and we're ready.
I love springtime. Crawfish, daylight savings is over. Now we're going to have some fun. We can stay out a little bit later and have some fun with the sun going out late, a little bit later in the afternoon. But we have a great show for you. Hey, we did the father-son thing recently. We had Bobby Hebert and his son T-Bob surprise, his dad. We're not going to do any of the surprise this time, but we have the first father-son combination in the history of the New Orleans Saints. Rich Mauti, who played from 77 to 84, will join by one of the newer members. That's right, Michael Mauti, who we all remember on that Thursday night did a Steve Gleason-type block punt, and that's going to be great. We also have John Brady, the only coach that's taken LSU to a Final Four in the last 30 years since Dale Brown did it. And don't forget Jordy Culotta from ESPN Baton Rouge. And I'm also going to have one of the greatest quarterbacks in Tulane history, Roch Hontas. But before we get to that, I have to talk a little bit about Saints free agency. They don't have a lot of money to spend, so they got some of their free agents signed from their own team. But this is the big splash. Kobe Fleener is hopefully going to be the next Jimmy Graham at 6'6", 250 pounds, and 4.5 speed. They hope he can be the guy. But it's March Madness, and we're going to have a little contest with the band and I. We'll get into that next week. But I have to say this, LSU won't be going anywhere because they elected not to play in the postseason. Ben Simmons, Johnny Jones, something's going on there. The superstar Ben Simmons, he had a great season. Many will say a disappointment because they did make it. The media crush was huge, as well as everything else. But we have a great show for you. It's Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander.
Weeknights at midnight on LAE.
Welcome back, New Orleans. And that, of course, Derek Freeman and the MFG. We're so thankful each and every week we have them as our house band. And by the way, a couple weeks ago, we had a father-son combination. We surprised the Cajun Candy, Bobby Hebert with his son T-Bob, of course, former LSU player, and now both up with WWL. Bobby didn't know he was going to be on. Surprised him, had some fun with it, and we had so much fun we decided to do it again without the surprise this time. In fact, we have the very first father-son combination in Saints football history. And, well, it's the only one they've ever had, first and last right now. Rich Mauti, a guy I grew up watching.
Yeah, you're old like me.
Exactly. I was in, not grade school, I was in junior high, and his son Michael. Nice to see you. Absolutely. By the way, everybody remembers Michael's big play this year, blocking the punt. We'll get into that a little bit. But first, let's talk about you two as far as father and son. I mean, listen, you grew up with football your whole life. You had your dad playing for the Saints. Like, what's your first memory of his playing career? I mean, obviously you were already, obviously you retired by the time Michael was born, but what's the first time you knew your dad was special? He was an NFL player.
I think it was a combination of a lot of different moments, and whether we were in the grocery store, or, we really going to Saints games was what I can remember.
Season ticket holder.
Going to the
this
games,
whole time, right?
and kind of when we would just be walking, I'd go be getting chicken fingers at the stadium, and
everybody's yelling.
People, hey, that's Rich Mauti, that's Rich Mauti. Or, like somebody would tap their brother or something. Hey, that's Rich Mauti over there.
That's pretty cool, though.
So
It's
when
not
I'm young,
like, hey,
and I'm looking at that, I'm saying, wow, okay, that's pretty
Well,
cool.
I missed that. When
By the way, this is Rich Mauti. You came to the Saints in 1977, undrafted free agent, worked your way up. And by the way, Rich Mauti, for those of you who don't know, he is in fact, until recently, the two guys that just got inducted to the Saints Hall of Fame, Tyrone Hughes and the beer man, Michael Lewis. Those are the only two in Saints history that have more return yards than this guy. Obviously, when you left the Saints, you had that distinction. Wide receiver. You're an undrafted free agent. You came down to New Orleans. Talk about the early years, because that's back when they had 14-game schedules. The Saints had a 2-win season and a 4-win season before you came. You came here. It was a little rough early, and then it got really good. But talk about that whole process.
Well, thanks for bringing it up, Scott, because it's taken me 40 years to forget that. Now I'm going to recall all of that stuff. But I can tell you that coming out of college, there was 17 rounds or 16 rounds.
Right.
I knew I wasn't going to get drafted, so I just created one criteria. As a free agent, you get to pick any team you want to go to. So my criteria was pretty simple. Pick the worst team in the league, and I'd have the best chance to make it. So
Smart
I played
man.
7 years with the Saints and finished my career with the Redskins. But, it's easy to accumulate a lot of yards as a return man back then, because we didn't win many games, and we were always getting beat by 40 or 50 points.
You were getting a lot of kickoffs,
so I
right?
a lot of opportunities. So I got to
point.
give those other guys a lot of credit. They did a much better job returning punts and kickoffs than I did. I just
it wasn't all bad. I want people to remember the Saints were really bad in the 70s. And unfortunately, I'm about the same age as the Saints, so I remember each year painfully. But there was some time, I think it was your second and third year, where there was a big ray of hope. 7-9 was cause for parade. That's the first year they had a 16-game schedule. That was 78. That was a huge year. And then they parlayed that into 8-8, which, if not for Kenny Stabler's heroics at the end of that Monday Night Football game when the Saints had a 35-7 lead and lost it 42-35, I believe. Point being is they were getting closer and closer to that holy grail of the playoffs, and then the bottom dropped out. But first, talk about the two good years that you had in year 2 and 3.
Yeah, and first of all, we had a great coaching staff. Dick Nolan had just come over from San Francisco. Hank was in 1977, and he was at the end of his career. Dick Nolan came in and really had things going. And Archie had his best year, I think, in 78 or 79, where he was an all-NFC or all-pro. We had 4 or 5 all-pros, and Tommy Myers and Muncie and Henry Childs, and I think Wes Chandler was back there.
Great
offense.
Team. Great offense. I mean, Archie was one of the best quarterbacks. I mean, that year he probably was the best quarterback in the NFL.
Threw for a record for him. The problem was we had the flex defense. So we scored 35 points a game and gave up 40.
So they really were flex.
So we were flexible. Yeah, we gave up a lot.
Dick Nolan's flex, right? Wasn't that
it was Dick Nolan's flex, and the only thing we couldn't get quite right. And then
so
we
is
had
that the
momentum
defense they're
going.
playing now with you, Michael?
I don't know what they do now. I can't figure it out. They're all over the field. They're moving guys around. But so Dick Nolan had it going, and then there was some upper management office changes that the owner at the time, John Meekum, had made, and brought some other people in, and the complexion had changed radically, and we got some guys that really didn't belong in the locker room, and it went downhill very quickly.
Yeah, that 1-15. Yeah. Take us through that real quick, because it was a snowball effect. You go from 8-8, literally, and everybody's like, "This is the up-and-coming team. This is finally the Saints after a 12+ years are going to get it going." When did you know this was going to be bad? I mean, because you said you brought in some guys that were kind of bad character guys. I mean, I'll say them: Don Reese, Randy Crowder, I believe, some guys from Miami. But things went south. We know there was a drug issue in the locker room, but kind of let people know when you realized that this was not going to be a good thing.
Well, when you come out with such great expectations in the beginning of the year, coming off the 8-8 season, and we just had so many things going for us. We had good people, good players, and when you go 0-1, you lose your first game, you say, "Oh man," you're a little disappointed, and you say, "Okay, no big deal, we'll bounce back." About 0-4, you start saying, "Okay, this is not working the way we thought." And then at that point, things start to, you start getting that negative vibe on the sidelines. You got stuck getting the negative vibe. Well, we can't lose another one, otherwise we're out. And that starts building on itself. At 0-8, you know it's over and it's in trouble, and that's when everything just unraveled. We lost to Miami, a very close game.
But a lot of close games, though, in that whole stretch. That's the funny thing. It wasn't like you were getting blown out. There were a lot of just hard, like the Pelicans right now, a lot of just tough losses.
Well,
and
we shouldn't have. When we lost to Miami, I remember Ike Harris had a touchdown at the end of the game. We win the game, and they take it away for offensive pass interference, which they never call ever. But it got to where it's kind of like a Joey Browner thing, where they're looking for something to call against you because you're just so bad.
Brandon Browner.
Brandon Browner. I'm sorry. Not Joey Browner.
Joey
Brandon
Browner is.
Yeah.
If you're under 30, you don't have any idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I forgot about him already, I guess.
They couldn't wait.
But that's what happens to you. You just, they're all human, and they start looking for bad things, and momentum just goes against you. It's hard to dig out of it. And we never did until we went and beat the Jets up in the snow in the 15th game of the season. But
speaking of Browner, though, I mean, since you're on that topic, I mean, you played with Brandon this season. A tough year for him. I mean, this guy has a lot of pride. He has a Super Bowl ring his previous 2 years. I mean, Seattle and then obviously New England. I mean, what was that like going through that in that locker room? Because I know he had some issues with some media folks as well, Michael.
I think, look, I love playing with him. He's a competitor, and he plays hard, and that's the way that he plays. It just got to the point where, it's like you're saying, you get one, you get two, and next thing you know, it's like, the
NFL record.
The refs watch film too, so it's like, okay, who's the most penalized guy? Well, they're just looking at him. It's not like they were looking at Bro as hard as they're looking at Browner. And I'm not making an excuse for Browner. That's the way it goes. You gotta.
I actually started really feeling bad for the guy because every time you saw a big play happening, I swear you knew 39 was going to be the guy chasing him. And it's one thing. And listen, I know a lot of people are down on this town. I was just thinking, hey, there's some schemes that weren't going. It's not all on Brandon Browner, right?
Well, look, you come from a Super Bowl team in Seattle. He's obviously doing something right, so the New England picks him up. They know what they're doing when they're looking at talent. And so he comes down here, and maybe he's doing things he's not used to doing, or the whole different system. So, obviously he's not a bad player. It's he's not, maybe he just didn't fit for him or whatever the case may be, and obviously not a bad person either. It's just
no
just the circumstances. Unfortunately it didn't work. The penalties just kind of started stacking up against him.
They stacked
snowball.
I mean, usually an offensive lineman will lead the league. The defense. I mean, this is the most of all time. But still, let's get off. Growing up together, obviously, dad, son. Give me something about him that most of us won't know anything about.
Well, a couple of things, and I checked with my wife Nancy first to make sure that I said the right things in these things because I probably view things differently than she does. But I think one of the things that Michael is it's interesting that he's in such a brutal, tough sport.
And plays a brutal position.
Linebacker, he plays a tough
those
position,
are the guys that.
And he plays it well, and he plays it with passion, and so he hits that switch, and he's able to perform in that environment. He's really on the other side. He has a talent to play the piano and music, and he's deep in history and loves things outside of the football thing where you'd say, well, wait a second, he's artistic. I mean, he can do things, views things differently than a normal, rough, tough football player.
So who got him into the piano?
Well, I have to say Nancy, because if I don't, then she'll just burn the film. So
the show's over.
No, Nancy. I mean, we bought a piano with our first child, who was born, Patrick, and it didn't work out for him. And then Rachel didn't really play much, and Michael was the one that picked it up. So we tried to expose him to as many different things outside of football that we could.
Well, you sent a picture of him playing piano. We're still trying to figure out how to crop it, but we'll get that.
Okay.
But hey, I want to take you through some hairdos you've had because they have changed dramatically. You're a young guy still. What?
Absolutely.
What are you, 24, 25? 26? Okay. Yeah. All right, so we have you playing for the Mandeville Skippers. Obviously, you guys are North Shore guys. Short hair, looking all clean cut. Look at this guy right here. You go to your father's alma mater. You go to Penn State. Starting to change. You got all business in the front, party in the back right
mullet
there.
City, let's
yep,
go.
You got the mullet working. I love it. And then you continue. And then you just went all out with this one.
Undertaker.
I mean, the Undertaker right there. Yeah. I love it. That is an awesome picture.
Love that one.
And you went through. So kind of explain these dudes going through here.
So, before the mullet, I was shaved head with Coach Paterno. He wouldn't let us have hair, I guess, below the ears, or a beard for that matter. So you couldn't have more than like a 3-day shadow. And so as soon as Coach O'Brien got there at Penn State, you know, one of the first, in like our first team meeting, one of the guys, can we grow our hair? Can we have a beard? And he's like, I don't care what you do with your hair. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And y'all were coming off the Sandusky thing.
It's like
so
your
it's
coach
like,
just, Paterno just passed away. You know, Brian's walking into his hornet's nest. He don't even know about it. You know, the first question he gets is, can we grow our hair out? He's like, I don't care what you do with your hair.
It's the least of my worries.
Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Well, I have a
Grow
couple
your damn
pictures
hair.
of your dad. You could have copied these. This is like the Buster Brown look your dad had early on. Yeah, that's a good
yeah.
Wow.
one. See, that's a tight look right
yeah.
there.
That's
And
a
then-
split end. It's describing my hair.
Well, no,
probably.
this is the one that's the split end. That's the next one. There you go. There's your
split
butt cut, the zipper head.
Oh, yeah.
You could have gone that style. That was big late 70s around New Orleans.
I got that from Tinker Owens. That was his.
By the way, Tinker Owen. Did we just get a Tinker Owen shout out? One of my favorite Saints of all time. And you're still in touch with him?
Oh, absolutely. We're good friends. Know the family. Watch him grow. He's in Oklahoma. He's done very well. He's got grandkids, and every time he comes in town, we get together.
All right, you guys are the rare. Besides playing for the same pro team, it's less. I guess it would be less rare that you play for the same college team, but you play for the same coach, which is a little. I mean, obviously you had Paterno, and then obviously you had O'Brien, right? You've been both there. So talk about playing for Paterno and the advice you gave him, playing for the same coach, literally 3-4 decades later.
Well, I mean, Joe was a different guy during the end of his career, and than he was when I played there. I mean, Joe was tough. I mean, and I was a free-spirited guy, and thank goodness for Joe. My thanks to Joe is that he grabbed me by the ankles and pulled me down and said, "Look, it's my way or the highway. It's not your way, Marty." And,
Right.
And get it right and go to class
You
and
a New
graduate.
Yorker coming through?
I was a flake. I mean, I was playing
a
lacrosse. I was a lacrosse player. I wanted to play lacrosse. When he recruited me, he came in, he sat with my dad, and he says, we're going to give you a scholarship to play football. We want you to be great. And I go, well, I'll come if you let me play lacrosse. And my dad kicked me so hard under the table. He said, and Joe was like, yeah, whatever. What's that game anyway? He didn't even know what the stick looked like.
All-American lacrosse player, by the way. I forgot to even bring that up. I'm glad you reminded that because great lacrosse player. Which did you like more?
Oh, lacrosse, hands down. I didn't want to play football. Lacrosse, in 1977 when I came out, I knew I wasn't going to get drafted. Lacrosse just started professional box lacrosse in Canada. So I was going to go there for $200 a week and play lacrosse. And they said, you really ought to go to camp. Just try this football thing.
Yeah, try this
They had
out.
a world team that I made to go travel. It was the first world lacrosse team to go over in Australia and play a lacrosse game. I wanted to go there. And so I called the coach, save me a spot because I won't be in camp long. So he said, no, you just stay in camp and don't worry about it. And of course, I ended up making it. But that's what I really wanted to do. I love lacrosse.
Speaking of Paterno, though, a delicate situation with the whole Sandusky thing and how people view Joe. Because, and listen, I remember Joe as a kid coming here, the Alabama game. But I had to laugh at something because when you were with the Vikings, you had the whole issue last year with Adrian Peterson and the whole thing, and we all know the situation with his child. And you were asked questions, and you're like, this is nothing compared to having to deal with the Sandusky issue at Penn State.
Honestly, going through a situation like that with the media at Penn State, there was really nothing is ever going to touch that as far as the magnitude, I think. But so. The media was crazy in Minnesota, but it wasn't anything close to what.
The mass exodus. I mean, obviously at Penn State, you had a dad that graduated there. Is that what made you stay and stick this whole thing through? I mean, because a lot of your friends, a lot of your teammates were leaving. What made you stay at Penn State after it?
Well, I mean, there wasn't a mass exodus. That's really what the narrative that we were that the media was trying to put on us that really wasn't there.
Darn media, they always lead us the wrong way.
No, and so we kind of saw everything from a different perspective, really. I mean, something that we had nothing to do with, that this situation was being thrown in our laps, and we kind of just, we were fifth-year seniors. A lot of our class had been together through a whole lot before then, so we were kind of built to, we were experienced enough to sit down and handle it the right way. Granted, we had O'Brien and a great staff that he put together to help us through that time, and we just had a lot of great senior leadership on that team that just kind of rallied around their guys and their position groups and just kept everybody together. I mean, we only lost 3 starters and maybe some walk-ons were getting calls from Oklahoma and some other big schools,
right.
like guys that would have never played They've never been on the field with us, but all of a sudden they're popping offers from all these other schools, and so, you know, if I was them, I'd be out of there too. But the media, every time one of them left, it's like, oh, you know, they're a mass exodus, and so, you know, we're like, that's all right. Well, we had our guys, and that was okay.
One of the things I think people would be surprised about you, Michael, you're a sprinter. I mean, everybody knows Stephon Anthony's fast, but you were a sprinter in high school. You did the 200. You were the last leg at the 4x100.
Absolutely.
Fast linebacker, 3 ACL injuries in college. You had a shoulder injury. You dealt with that. Talk about getting through that, and also talk about the athletic family. It's not just Rich and you. Your mom was an athlete, your wife, your sister, volleyball player with the Raging Cajuns at one time, UL, and then your brother played wide receiver at Penn State.
Well, look, athlete full of families, we got good genetics. I guess I can thank this one for that, and my mother.
Look at him now. I mean, he still looks like he could play.
I'm not the athlete even close to what these guys are, believe me.
No, we got a good group of athletes, but yeah, I was a sprinter in high school, and that's really where I think I got most of my speed from. But I could run, and it just, you know, had some injuries in college. I got through, and I was able to rehab them up. And I mean, I had hung up my cleats after college. I had my most recent one. I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. What am I doing here? But,
right.
And then I got another opinion from another different doctor. He put me together, orthopedics from the Steelers. Who might have been before you at Penn State. He played. Jim Bradley.
Bradley,
and,
I played a year with
All-American
him.
corner. They're great orthopedists. He put me back together and never looked back. Started rehabbing and.
Actually, knew Pat Bradley. Wasn't Pat Bradley a coach there? I mean, off the topic, because he was coming to recruit when I was in Georgia a lot. And I remember he was one of you guys under Paterno. But on another topic, real quick, the Saints. I have to get to it before this ends. When you got the call from the Saints to come over, or September, and I want both of y'all's reaction when it happened, because this is a big deal. I mean, you get not only the first father-son combination, but you live here. You put your roots here for the last 30, 40 years. And I want both of y'all's reaction when you heard you were coming home.
Well, so
Michael, you could. Yeah.
I'll start it just because I was
excited about it. Yeah.
I was so the cutoff to get claimed off the waiver wire, I guess.
Yeah.
So I had to wait Saturday night the whole night. You know, you don't hear anything till noon on Sunday. So it was about 11:30.
Right before the season starts, right?
Right. This is right after
right.
training camp.
Right.
Like, week one is the following week. So, and so I'm sitting in a Wendy's parking lot. I'm eating like junior bacon cheeseburgers. I got like 3 of them, just like stressing out. I don't know what my agent's calling me. He's like, they want you to go sign with the practice squad. I'm saying, I ain't doing that. I'm waiting it out. I got 30 more minutes. And so about 10 minutes go by, and somebody texts me a screenshot of like New Orleans claims Mauti.
I didn't know that it was down to that long down.
Oh, it was. Yeah, they don't tell you anything.
Son coming home. I got to get to one more. So son coming home.
Most exciting thing is the previous year we were in Minnesota outside for a November game. It was 16 below.
Wow.
So Nancy and I said, "Wow, we don't have to do that anymore." No, we were completely thrilled and excited for Michael to be able to come home, for us to be able to see him and to be part of this community. Michael's a New Orleanian. He's born and raised here. He loves it. Fish hunt.
It's gotta be a dream come true.
It's a dream come true for all of us.
Speaking of dream come true, I mean, listen, I got to bring up the block punt in the Falcons game. The Falcons 5-0 coming in here. You know, they were rolling on Thursday night. I made the prediction. I said, I went on the radio and said, I guarantee this victory. Saints are 1-4. I said, I had 20 lunch bets with listeners. They're like, you're out of your mind. So thank you. I eat well and I gained all this weight. But my point being is, like, talk about we all compare it to Gleason because it reminded us of 06. You were in the building in 06.
I was
when they came
there.
back. So I yelled out in the press box, literally within a second. I said, "This is Gleason all over again." And everybody started writing stories they were claiming for themselves. But point being is, you talk about that moment, because not only did you block the punt, you got the touchdown and gave the Saints the 14-0 lead.
It was just unbelievable moment, though. But really, I don't know if it's luck or whatever it is, but they just didn't pick me up. The personal protector just completely biffed on the block, and so I just got there soon enough to where the ball didn't go anywhere. So as soon as I hit the ground, I looked up, I kind of opened my eyes and just scooped it up. Austin Johnson, I was on the ground on my shoulder, and next thing you know, I was on my feet. He picked me up, and we carried me in there.
I mean, these pictures are great. And by the way, Gleason, we have some pictures of him doing his thing. Obviously, he's become a folk hero in this town. This happened in 2006. I remember first time I had actually paid for a ticket to a sporting event, and did so gladly. I was at the top of the terrace because I was living out of town. I came in, and by the way, he has a statue now. Obviously, we all know it, the Rebirth statue. when is yours going to be set outside the dome? We're going to get one of those.
I
real
don't
soon.
deserve one of those. Believe me, he deserves every bit of that statue, and that's the way it should be.
All right,
So
one
I'm just
last
happy
thing,
to
because I can't,
recreate it.
because they're telling me you got to go, but I have to put this picture up. This one picture is my favorite of all season, and I think you might know what I'm talking about. It encapsulates the season. It was at Carolina, and I remember it so well. It's all these first-year players. Willie Snead's outstretched arms, just trying to get the first down, and they needed that to keep something going on. There's Ricky Holy Kakaha, Damian Swan behind you, and you're the one in there kind of coaching it in, and it fell up. But this is the oh-so-close picture that pretty much makes the season what it was.
Look, you got a bunch of guys that just want to win and we're competitors, and that game was so close. Really came down to the wire last drive, and it really in both Carolina games we feel like we had opportunity to win those games. It just really came down to us in execution, but man, so close. It'll be a lot of fun going into next year. We'll have a lot of guys with some experience, and those rookies kind of got those nerves off of them, and it'll be great.
Well, dude, I can't thank you enough. Hey, Rich, I'm going to get you both to sign. This is
deal.
the ball. All the Saints players have been on it, plus all my guests. And I want to thank you,
nice
Mike.
of you
Thanks
to
for having
provide
us.
that for us.
Yeah,
Thank
you can
so
take it
much,
home with you.
Emma.
Put it on the wall. No, but Rich Mauti, Michael Mauti, father-son combination,
Thanks
by
for
the
that,
way.
Tim.
I think I have it somewhere. Yeah, you guys go to a little bit of lunch, Legacy Kitchen. And by the way, I hear you make a mean sandwich.
You know
All right,
what?
That's kind of your thing.
I am a closet gourmet cook.
All right.
Determine what that means in your spare time, but I like to cook.
All right,
Whether it's good or not, I don't know.
They're telling me I got to go to break. We're going to have next. We have, in my opinion, Tulane's greatest quarterback passing of all time, and they've had some good ones. Roch Hontas will be coming up next. And later in the show, I've got my NCAA correspondent, John Brady. He promised me he's going to be here for the next 3 weeks, and he's going to be joined by Jordy Culotta from ESPN Radio. John Brady just retired from coaching. We all know 11 years with the LSU Tigers and the last 8 with Arkansas State. I'm Scott Alexander, and you're watching Primetime Sports. We'll be right back.
My life is full of statistics. Thing is, I could have dropped out of school and become one myself, but I didn't because I had people that believed in me. Here's another statistic. 7,000 students drop out every school day. That's 1 every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at boostup.org.
Welcome back, Crescent City. Of course, that's Derek Freeman in the MFG. And there's some times when you're a little kid and you remember some things that go back to your childhood. And one of the things I remember is Tulane football. Growing up, before my next guest played, it was at Tulane Stadium with Steve Foley. They had a quarterback for a year in between, but the second year they played in the Dome, there was a guy from Canton, Ohio that came down to New Orleans. It was a 3.5-year starter for the Green Wave. I know he played a good bit his freshman year, but his sophomore, junior, and senior seasons. And my next guest, Kevin Costner. No, I'm kidding. No, Dr. Roch Hontas, orthopedic surgeon in town. He was a Tulane quarterback, 76, 77, 78, 79. I was in 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And the thing I remember most, when you left, you were Tulane's all-time leading quarterback, yardage, touchdowns, percentage. And instead of going to the NFL, you decided to become a doctor. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Talk about this. I mean, you're from Canton. And obviously my previous guest, they went to Penn State, the Mautis, Michael, his dad, and his brother. And you decided, you said you were between Penn State and Tulane. What made you come down to the Crescent City?
Well, that's a real interesting story because you're right. Early in the recruiting period, I was all set to go to Penn State. And I was even talking to Rich earlier, and we even talked about some of the coaches that were recruiting me then. And, of course, he remembered them from when he was there. And I had my visit there in December, loved it.
Right.
And it was a sure thing. And it wasn't until January that I made my visit to Tulane. And it just, with everything that Tulane had to offer, my brother was already here in medical school. And that was certainly my intention, to go to medical school one day, hopefully, and to play ball and to live in New Orleans. It was just too much to turn down.
And it was on the heels, though, of Paterno and Penn State, obviously they had just come and played Alabama recently in the Sugar Bowl. That's one of the most historic games I remember as a kid growing up. So Penn State was the real deal. Tulane, a little bit struggling. 73, they had that great year. I think they were 9-3, but the years leading in, they weren't doing so well.
Well, that, like my children ask me, they said, Dad, who doesn't go to Penn State that's offered a scholarship there? I mean, that's ridiculous. And for a minute there, I thought it was, but I made the decision, and I came down here, and I've never looked back.
Well, your name, Roch, R-O-C-H, obviously, and being from New Orleans, we kind of understand spelling it that way, but most people would put the K behind it. It's kind of interesting. You come down St. Roch down here. How did you get that name all the way up in Ohio?
That is a real interesting story, Scott. I was born, I was one of the baby boomers in the late 50s, and I was placed in a nursery at that time, a little Catholic hospital up in Canton, Ohio, and I was in St. Roch's nursery. Well, that was my given name, simply because my parents at that point did not have a male name picked out. Fast forward 18 years, come down here, and it was I believe third or fourth week of the season. I was walking off the practice field, and you mentioned Steve Foley, and funny enough, Steve Foley's father stopped me, introduced himself, and gave me a St. Roch medal, and told me the history of St. Roch and how popular of a saint he was in the New Orleans area.
That's interesting.
And gave me literature and a book, and I read up on it, and in Canton, the name Roch means nothing, but in New Orleans, it's a very popular name.
And if you're under 50, maybe 45, you probably don't know the exploits of this guest right here. I want to let people know some of your numbers, and it's a little different. This wasn't the run and shoot era when Sean King was here getting 9,000 yards in a few seasons. But back then, these are the numbers. I mean, listen, football was running in the 70s. For the young kids that don't know that. That 2,345 yards, by the way, 7th in the country that year. 21 touchdowns was 3rd in the country. And that percentage, which it doesn't show you in 1977, number 1 in the entire country, 64% you threw that year. Your accuracy, these were all Tulane records. The season numbers when you left, and obviously the career numbers, all of them you held when you left the Tulane Green Wave. Talk about that.
Well, I must have been sleepwalking through 1976. I don't know what I was doing there, but
well, you're a freshman.
Yeah, you blinked a couple times and those records were long gone. There were a lot of good quarterbacks. Terrence Jones came in the mid 80s.
Well, it's funny you say that because we have a list of those guys, and I've always said this because Steve Foley was the first one I saw. He was obviously a longtime Denver Bronco, but he played defensive back, 13-year guy, played cornerback and safety. But this group of Tulane quarterbacks, people might forget. I mean, it's a pretty established group, some first-round picks in there. Sean King's on that list. They were 12-0 in 1998. People seem to forget that. But you've seen them all come through. Talk about this list.
Well, clearly there's a lot of talented players. I mentioned Terrence and then Sean King, Patrick Ramsey. I don't know JP as much, and I've never met Ryan Griffin. But really one of the more talented ones, in my opinion, on that list, it's not on that list, is Tanner Lee, who recently just transferred out of Tulane in Nebraska. And I think given the opportunity, I think you're going to hear a lot of really good things about him. I think I watched him in high school.
He played with your son, right? Yeah.
Yes, he did. My son was, I believe, in 8th or 9th grade when Tanner was a senior at Jesuit. And I watched him there, and I thought his mechanics, his throwing motion, he has great size, he has great arm strength. And I think, obviously I'm biased, I didn't want him to leave Tulane, but I think he probably found he'll find his niche at Nebraska.
Well, he was on last week. I love that. I love him. I mean, he's going to be a great pocket passer up there. Perfect system. Yes. Obviously, they had Willie Fritz come in. And speaking of Willie Fritz, the option quarterback style coach, since you've been here, and I'm going to put you on the spot, we're going to have some fun. Tulane has had 11 head coaches since you had your head coach, Larry Smith. I want to see if you can name them. Before we put the graphic up, I want to see if you can name them in order from the time Larry Smith was here. Now, if you think about that, you started, Larry Smith was 76, so that's 40 years ago. 11 head coaches, do the math. That's less than four per average per career for 4 years. So, think you can go all the way through?
I could try.
All right.
Vince Gibson and Wally English, Mac Brown.
All right, this is easy for him.
Davis, and I can't think of Davis's first name.
Buddy Tevens followed Davis, then Tommy Bowden, Chris Selfo, then Bob Toledo, and then CJ.
So Dr. Hontas does follow.
Did I
We're going
get
to put him up just so everybody sees. But it's funny because, you know, everybody's pretty much – and by the way, this is what surprised me. Selfo has been there 8 years. He was the longest for 8 years. Benny Ellender was before you. That's the guy I first remember, the bald head coach who was coaching Tulane Stadium when they beat LSU 14-0 back in '73. You guys had some of the most success, particularly your senior year. That's when you guys were 9-2, highly ranked. You know, back then the Liberty Bowl was a big deal. You went to that game and lost a close one. But here's the group: Tevens, Bowden, Selfo. Obviously, Bowden had that 12-0 year, so he parlayed that into going to Clemson. But what are some of your memories of Larry Smith, though? And because the only 4 years he was here were during your 4-year stretch.
Yes, we came and went together. I don't. That's simply a coincidence, but he was a player's coach, and I think what he did the best is he hired quality assistants, and there was particularly on the offensive side. But there was a coach. I know some of these fellas probably remember Lindy and Fanny, who was my offensive coordinator, who was then just a brilliant offensive mind, and
was throughout his NFL career too,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
And if you looked at those numbers, none of those numbers, I wouldn't have had half those numbers had he not been there, particularly my senior year.
Let's have some fun with you. Back when you were playing, what kind of car did you drive, or did you have? What was your favorite car back in the '70s?
It was a BMW 2002. I don't know if you remember those. It was like a little box. And I remember I saw one. I said, boy, I just have to have one day. And I don't think I got it till I think I was out of school, in medical school somewhere in there.
Well, we have a picture from high school. I want you to kind of explain this one right here. This is, I think, back from 1970. Might have even been a little bit earlier.
Oh, boy.
That you just kick back. I love the hairdo. You saved some money on a barber, obviously.
Yep.
But talk about that growing up in Canton, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is.
And I bet Rich remembers, I believe he's played up there. That picture was taken in Fawcett Stadium in Canton, Ohio, which is where the Pro Football Hall of Fame game is played.
Wow.
And that was our home stadium. And it was on one of the little bleachers there. And clearly I saved some money at the barber shop.
By the way, you do look like Kevin Costner now. I mean, maybe not, when you were in college and growing, but now that he's lost a little hair, I mean, when you walked in, I thought pretty close. Now, the Tulane career, after Tulane, what made you decide to eschew the pro career and go to med school?
Well, keep in mind, there was certainly no talk of playing professional football until at least midway in my senior year. And also keep in mind that I came to Tulane primarily to go to medical school. And if I played football, fine, but that really wasn't what attracted me here in the first place. Once I got my acceptance into medical school, and I remember the day, it was March 17th, 1980. The draft was in April, and I didn't, after that day, I thought about it for about an hour.
Wow,
if that. And then I said, no, I don't want to do that.
All right, two different musicians, every word to every song. Are there two out there? I'm just curious.
Well,
three maybe?
We exchanged some text messages. Yeah, there's a couple. My affection for music is not particularly great, but it spans some generations, and it goes back to the Meatloaf years in the '70s, to the
Paradise by the Dashboard Lights.
Well, one of the all-time classics.
Do you do the act out that Meatloaf does in the video?
I've seen him do it a couple times. I've tried to do my best to replicate it. I can't do it as well.
Anything more recent?
Well, then of course you have one I enjoy listening to now is Nelly, and he sang a song called Grills, and I tried to do
with a Z on the end. I don't think now that's something I
two
don't
L's,
think people would
two
have
L's
known
and
you.
a Z, right? 2 L's and a Z.
Well, here we have a gift certificate for you for Legacy Kitchen, which is a sponsor of the show. So take your wonderful wife eat. I mean, it's Janice, right?
Thank you, Janice.
Because it is Rock Jan.
Janice, the love of my life, yes.
And here's what we started a tradition. I got Bobby Hebert, Ricky Jackson, Deuce McAllister, Jabari Greer, and we're doing a little tradition, signing the ball when you come in. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for having me.
Roch Hontas, Tulane legend. Obviously, there was Foley, Hontas, and then the rest of the group that came later to the NFL. It all began with this guy right here. But coming up next, hey, we're going to go switch gears a little bit to LSU, one of my favorite people of all time and one of my favorite talk show hosts, and a guy that has been on my show literally every single week for my first 3 years on the radio. Of course, it's John Brady, 11-year coach of the Tigers, recently retired, and Jordy Culotta, two good friends. Coming up next, right here on Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander.
The mark of Legacy Kitchen is simple. We offer numerous dishes like chicken enchilada soup, prime filet and loaded baked potato, baby back ribs, and so much more. At Legacy Kitchen, we serve American fare, crafted cocktails, and we offer a great selection of wines by the glass. Metairie at Betts and Martin Berman, and in the Warehouse District at Chapatulas and Girard.
North Shore Basketball Training Center is located at 70239 Highway 59 in Abita Springs. Here we offer developmental programs for all ages, focusing on structure, hard work, putting forth great effort, and teamwork. North Shore Basketball Training Center also offers year-round basketball teams, leagues, camps, speed and agility conditioning, and other programs to help enrich our students. North Shore Basketball Training Center, 985-373-7367 or northshoresportsplex.com.
Welcome back, Crescent City. Sometimes they say you save the best for last, and then sometimes you have my next guest. Nope, this is a segment I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm just cutting up. Trust me on this. I love these guys. I have former LSU head coach John Brady, who just retired from coaching. He's been at Arkansas State for the last 8 years, coached the Tigers for 11, and had a great career even before that leading in. But also a guy that I owe a lot to in this business, quite frankly, because I had never done radio, and about 3.5 years ago I started in it, and he was a guest for literally the first 3 years, every single week, talking LSU, all sports, and we talked about other things as well. So I have a lot of debt of gratitude to my next guest, Jordy Culotta, as well. John, Jordy.
How you doing, Scott? Good to see you, baby.
Good to see you guys. Welcome. And ironically, the reason that these two are together is because they're also good friends. In fact, y'all had dinner last night at a restaurant in Baton Rouge, and now you're coming today. And we are going to lunch after this because I do have a Legacy Kitchen gift certificate for both of you guys. So anyway, let's start with the coach. Coach, you just retired, man. I mean, it's finished right now. I mean, talk about this. I mean, is this a decision you came to early?
Before the season, I announced that whatever happened this year, this is going to be my last year at Arkansas State. And that's not to rule out I may not coach again. Probably not as a head coach. You know, I would be an assistant for the right guy in the right situation. Maybe try to do something you're doing. Maybe do a little TV. And I'm gonna go talk to the people at SEC Network and that sort of thing. See if I can do something where I can be around the game, but not be responsible for everything that goes with the game.
Well, by the way, my good friend Ed Conroy just lost his job yesterday, and I hate that for Ed. Great guy.
Yeah, good guy.
That's a job open. And by the way, John is going to start living here full time. He's got a lot of roots in Louisiana, grew up in Macomb, Mississippi. But any interest in that possibly?
Well, you know, that's a difficult question. Obviously, that would be a great place. I mean, because I love the city, I love New Orleans, and I've got a place in the Warehouse District where I'm going to be staying and living. So, you know, that's a great opportunity.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Coach.
You did put me on the spot.
I put him on the spot. I really didn't mean it. I wasn't even planning on going there. It just happened.
Yeah,
and I do apologize. Yeah. Let's talk about your career, though, because it's not like you wouldn't be a great candidate, okay? You're a very young guy for your age, and you're not that old anyway. But when you talk about the career, it all started here. I mean, he was an assistant at Mississippi State first, but he came to Crowley. I mean, you know, it's not that's that far from where you grew up, but still, Crowley's a whole different world. You started your career there. Long-time assistant for a couple coaches. I know Boyd and Richard Williams over at Mississippi State had some success there. Came down here to UNO. I mean, you got your taste in New Orleans with Tim Floyd, who I love, by the way. Great guy.
Good guy.
And then just talk about this. Samford, who, by the way, my old coach took over for you, Jim Tillett, at Samford. Then you came to LSU. Just talk about the progression, particularly the LSU part.
Well, it's all about any success you have in business is all about connections. The biggest connection I made that influenced my career was my friendship with Joe Dean Jr. at Mississippi State. We were graduate assistants together for Kermit Davis Sr. When he was the coach at Mississippi State, and that's how I got to know Joe Jr. and got to know the Dean family. And you know, Mr. Dean, the general they call him, he helped me get the job at Crowley. He helped me get almost every job I've ever had. And then lo and behold, I had some success. And then the LSU thing came open. And because of that relationship, he wouldn't even have looked at me had he not known me since I was 17, 18 years old. And I'll always be indebted to Mr. Dean and Joe Jr. and that whole family for giving me the opportunity to coach at LSU. Just changed my life, changed my career, and it's something that I'll always be appreciative of.
Joe's one of my favorite guys in the world. I mean, I got to work with him for about 15 years doing SEC games with Tim Brando, doing the production side of it. Just a fabulous guy. Speaks tremendously high of you. You guys go way back, but Joe Dean Sr., I mean, that's the last time I saw you. It just hit me. Was when you came in town for the funeral, and we saw you at walk-ons. Richard Williams, Joe obviously there. Jordy was there. We were all having, I guess the day before the funeral, we were all having like a drink and a little after LSU game bite. So he means a lot to you.
He touched a tremendous amount of guys. Big Joe, Mr. Dean did, mine included, and tons of coaches that people don't even know. You know, the influence he had on young people back then. You know, he had at a camp at Dixie that's been going on for 35 years. He was running Converse for a long time, so he helped a lot of people, and I'm appreciative of that.
All right, a lot of you may or may not know, Coach has coached a lot of NBA players. I mean, literally, you even missed one.
I did.
It's 11. 11 NBA players from LSU in 11 years, and I want you to comment on some of these because you know these guys. I mean, Stromile Swift was a high recruit, but this is the first order. Now, I did it in order of where they were drafted, and I want you to comment first, Jordy, on some of these guys that Coach was able to bring in. And I'm talking big man after big man, guys that were all conference and big NBA players as well.
Well, those guys were game changers. I mean, for a stretch there, he had 4 Freshmen of the Year. He had Players of the Year in the conference, and guys that he was, from my point of view, the most respectable part is he was getting the best out of them as they were on campus. They came in with high accolades. I mean, all those guys that you go down the list, all those guys were high school recognized coming out, whether they were All-Americans, All-State, All-District, but when they got to Baton Rouge, when they got to LSU, they were demanded to bring it every day, and they were demanded by Coach to be at practice and putting forth effort and getting better. And, you know, he and his staff did an excellent job in watching him from the sideline and coach these guys. And it was something that I took away in watching Simmons this year. It was a little different vibe in watching him coach these bigger type recruits, these guys that came in with expectation, to where he demanded those guys get better every day. And I thought in that you saw, you know, I was there for him and Glenn and him and Tyrus to watch them go at each other during practice, but after it was over, you could see the sense of respect that the players had for the coach because they wanted to get better. They expected to get better. They expected to be coached up. And that was one thing that he did overwhelming to those guys. You know, it's hard to go out and recruit to get those guys to commit to come to your campus. In my opinion, it's harder to get them on campus and coach them up and get them to produce like he did. And, you know, if you go down the list, all those guys were either the SEC Player of the Year, they were the All-SEC First Team, some of them were the SEC Freshman of the Year, and they won a lot of basketball games
first
together.
of all, Jordy obviously knows LSU, he knows sports in general. He is with ESPN Baton Rouge, been for about a half dozen years. But I want you to talk about the first big recruit you had.
Stromile Swift was the key to
Fair Park, Shreveport. I remember I was doing a national recruiting show for television out of state.
Right.
And I remember flying to Shreveport and doing a thing on him. This guy was special.
Well, the first year, you know, we kind of made it do. We came in and signed a few guys late, but that's the recruit that Butch Pierre. You got to go with Butch Pierre. We targeted Stromile Swift. We knew if we were going to make a splash at LSU that we had to get the best players in the state, and he was a guy we targeted, and we were able to get him. You know, we were on probation at that time. That's when we took the job.
By the way, he took over a program. Everybody remembers Dale's 25 years. The last 3 years, not so good. The cupboard was left bare because of the probation. And I remember seeing that first year. I'm gonna give you props before Strohmeyer was there.
Right.
And I remember y'all lost a lot of close games.
Yeah, we did.
And I was like, this dude can coach his butt off. I mean, I remember calling Joe Jr. and saying, dude, you got the right guy. This ain't gonna be the year, but. And 2 years later, you were what, 28-6? But yeah,
we won the league on probation with 9 scholarship players, and,
nice.
and went to the Sweet 16. But Strohmeyer was the key, and his mother had some real insight. I remember when Strohmeyer came his first year, he only played like the last 13 games because he just got eligible that semester and he couldn't practice. And I remember one night Strohmeyer had like 3 points and 5 fouls, didn't do well, and I was all nervous about him and wanted to know if he was happy, wanted to know if he was going to leave, the things that coaches think about. His mother called me.
Exactly.
His mother called me at 12 o'clock that night after that game.
Right.
And she says, Coach, we need to talk about my son. I said, yes, we do. I said, now, how do you want to start this? She says, well, I want to tell you something first. She said, Strohmeyer's where he wants to be, where he needs to be, where he's going to stay. He said, now, he's not going anywhere, he's not leaving. Now, unless you and I have a talk about my son. Well, from that point on, when she told me he wasn't going anywhere, then I was able to coach him like I wanted to.
Right.
And like I thought was best for his development. Parents today sometimes don't do that. They hold the thread over your head, I'm going to transfer, we're going to leave, so it compromises sometimes what the coach may need to do. And I was fortunate that she backed me like that.
He and Tyrus similar. I mean, Tyrus redshirted his first year. He wasn't recruited by Strohmeyer, of course. I mean, that was Big Baby and Brandon were the big recruits the previous year. But he had that 1 year meteoric rise. I mean, in 06, I mean, we knew he came out of nowhere. And I was at every one of your games in the tournament. I was in Jacksonville against Iona. We sweated it out against A&M, big time, 1-point win. That's
Daryl
before
Mitchell.
Yes. Darryl Mitchell, the big shot.
How many times did I
Dude,
say
you wouldn't
his
be
name?
wearing that Final Four jacket that has that Final Four essential. You better be sitting here. Thank you.
God bless Daryl Mitchell.
Don't worry, he does.
And then, of course, you made me the mayor of the Georgia Dome because that was where I was living, and I got to like roam around. All my friends that live there, like, look at Scotty Gladhead and everybody down there because we beat Duke, who was obviously J.J. Redick was crying as he left the thing, and I love Redick. And then Texas with Lamarcus Aldridge, and then I flew, and then I couldn't get a flight to Indianapolis. And I took a Winnebago, and that's a whole nother story. But I got to Indianapolis, and the balloon popped. But what a magical run it was, Coach.
Yeah, it was, and it's a special group of guys. You know, I don't know if people ever really, identified with who those guys were and where they were from. You know, the top 7 players, 3 from Baton Rouge, the rest of them within 50 miles, of Baton Rouge, St. Martinville, Denham Springs, rest of them right there in Baton Rouge. So it's a unique group that knew each other, grew up together, had a brother family feeling toward one another. The camaraderie was great. The trust in one another was super. It was a privilege to coach those guys and a lot of fun. They had personality about them.
All right, I showed you the first graphic. Before I get to other notable players, I want to say the underachiever group that made the NBA as well, in my opinion, the guys like Garrett Temple, guys like Ronald Dupree, who came out, Marcus Thornton. I mean, this is another group. Jordy, talk about some of these guys, also NBA players, but maybe not as highly recruited.
Role players, team guys built around his belief in building programs. I mean, I think Garrett on that list, to me, is the best example I can note because I was there firsthand and had the opportunity to see them
You're friends with all
work
these guys, too.
day in, day out. And, it was a great experience. When I think back on that 2005, 2006 team and being able to be at practice every day and go to games and travel and watch those guys develop. I remember Tyrus Thomas, his true freshman season, catching a post entry in the dungeon on Darnell Lazar, who was there and just turned and put it in his face, and everybody just kind of stopped.
Oh my!
Just wow.
The practice court is the
absolutely
dungeon. Right.
This is a kid
that's a bar down the corner. He went down there.
For Dale Brown and I to accomplish some things good that we did with the dungeon as our practice gym.
Right.
People in the SEC don't even
You won't
understand
remember
that.
this, bro. I mean, I hosted Dale Brown at the 04 when he was a legend at the SEC tournament.
Right.
Y'all hadn't talked. And he was staying at the Marriott Marquis, and we had done our thing all day. We were running around town. In fact, I was the guy racing up the escalator with him when he splatted his face, and that's because he wanted to run. That was all over.
That's right.
Yeah,
I remember that.
But my point is, we see you. You're checking in, and I'm like, there's John Brady, and he got nervous. He goes, I haven't talked to him. Yeah. And I'm like, y'all need to talk.
I said this. I did a deal on Channel 9 last night with Jacques Doucette, and I made some mistakes early in my career with the media, insecure, maybe too quick to judge, and with Dale, I made some mistakes there. And Coach Brown and I have talked about that since. I should have done a better job. He admits he should have done a better job, and we should have come together and united the LSU basketball family, united the players, as opposed to the first several years they were creating a faction there. And that's something, an insecure young coach that got to.
No, it's huge for you to be able to admit that right now.
But I knew I could coach it.
Right.
I just didn't handle some of the other parts as well as I should have.
Speaking of some of the others, I have a graphic of some other notable players in mind. Some you might want to forget, some maybe not. But guys that had some character.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, Jaime Laredo is a good example because I was like, golly, I forgot about Jaime Laredo. He led the SEC in rebounds. People forget that.
Tough.
Tack Minor was a giant player coming out of high school.
I called him affectionately Heart Attack Minor.
Right. Oh yeah. You two got it going on. I remember the NIT game.
The camera wouldn't leave us.
Google that one up because I was all over
Come
it.
on now.
Tasman Mitchell was another McDonald's All-American. I had the asterisks by 4 others in that first graphic. But this is a special group as well.
Well, Taurus Bright, I mean, holy smokes, was he good. Started from day one, 4 straight years as a point guard from Slidell. Antonio Hudson, another
came out
solid
with Chris
player.
Duhon right around that time.
Those guys, all of those guys were really good players. And, you coach long enough at one spot, all of them aren't going to be great kids. You're going to have some guys you're going to have to fight and coach and struggle with. But as long as they want to get better, as long as they have the idea that they want to be the best they can possibly be, I will work with those guys. I don't mind some of that going on as long as they have the ability to come to practice and work hard every day.
And you could see his evolution standing next to him through those years. That 06 team that came in, he mentioned how close they were. I mean, they were extraordinarily close.
Right.
I mean, they grew up playing on the same team, sleeping at the same house.
Goodness. Yeah,
I mean, they won a national championship
thing when they got
a national championship at the AAU. And those kids would get out of games
Right.
afterwards, and they would try to go, and he would evolve and say, you know what, I'm going to let them do their thing and show their personality. And it helped his style. I think it helped him from his point of view on the bench in coaching them. And, they gave them the respect back where they didn't get into a lot of trouble.
Right.
And they showed up to practice, and they showed up to play and compete every night.
John's going to be my NCAA correspondent, so he's going to be here hopefully the next 2 weeks. We're going to get into Sweet 16 next week. But before I go, I've got to let you see the evolution, as you say. This is John when he first started coaching at LSU. Look at this young, vibrant guy. He can't wait to get into it. And there he is. Look at
His
John.
shoulders on that guy, man.
Look at this guy, broad. He's ready. And then after 20 years of coaching, because this is it. There's my man. Still a handsome man. But listen, I was doing triathlons 20 years ago, and there he is coaching Arkansas State. But my man, coaching can take a toll if you have a bunch of tack minors running around. I can tell you that right now. I can tell you that.
I only had hopefully just one.
I want you both to sign. We got my basketball wing down here. Jordy, you all both sign that ball. I want to thank you. We're gonna come back next week, and we're going to.
I'll be here.
We're going to talk. We're going to talk about. By the way, I have gift certificates to both of you guys. We're going to come back next week, and we're going to talk NCAA tournament. But I've got Legacy Kitchen for both of you guys. Great food, man. They got everything from steaks to redfish and it all. And we're going to enjoy this. I'll hold it for now. Thank you. I can't thank these guys enough. Jordy Culotta from ESPN Baton Rouge, and of course, former LSU head coach John Brady, who's in a temporary retirement, we hope, because I want to see him back on the sideline. But, man, I want to thank everybody out there. First of all, Will Hill, great directing job, producing the show as well. Hey, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, the guys that make this all possible, the Redhead Tsunami, and the band that I love each and every week, Derek Freeman, the MFG, James Martin, and Devin Taylor. These guys get it done, and they're the best in the business. And by the way, also, you can catch me each and every day on SaintsInsider.com and PelicansPride.com, part of the Scout family. It's kind of my other job, having fun, putting stories up each and every day, stories and video. And, of course, you can follow on Twitter. And you saw these other guys' Twitter sites as well. Check those guys out. It's been a great show. I want to thank everybody out there for watching Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander.